as most of you are aware, most likely because I can't shut up about it. I live on the Indonesian island of Bali. If you want a mental image, just pick up the movie Eat, Pray, Love on Netflix and fast forward to the last third of it. Can we still say fast forward in 2021? Is that still a thing? Anyway, one of the things that you'll immediately get if you come here, as soon as you step away from the traffic, is this sort of a sense of timelessness, right? So yes, everybody's got a smartphone. Yes, what happens in the rest of the world actually matters here. But there's this inescapable sense that the really important stuff, meaning, the small everyday stuff, is pretty much the same now as it's been for the last 1,000 years and will be for a long time to come. So whatever happens here, war, poverty, natural disasters, pandemics, people here really seem to take it all in stride. So you know how we say every United States Marine is first and foremost a basic rifleman. Well, every Balinese is at heart a rice farmer, and there's a rice field in your field of view more or less everywhere you go. So times might get tough here, but very few people are actually going to starve. So a few weeks ago, I had one of those horrible epiphanies. I realized that I've been on Bali for 1.5 years and I still don't speak Bahasa Indonesia, which is the Indonesian language. I've become one of those annoying expats who depends on the dedicated study of others in order to order coffee and find the bathroom. So shame on me. So we enrolled in a Bahasa Indonesia class, and you know what? It's easy. I mean, my last language was Russian, which I think left me with a permanent case of language PTSD. After 4 weeks of Bahasa Indonesia classes twice a week, I can communicate better than I can in Russian after 4 years of living with an actual Russian. But it might be interesting to you guys to know why Bahasa Indonesia is so simple. I mean, it lacks a lot of other things that make other languages tough. There are no articles, a and the. There's no distinction between singular and plural. There are no changes required to make different parts of speech agree, which is what makes Russian so horribly difficult. But here's the main thing, and it's particularly interesting when you understand that the words you speak directly affect your outlook on life. In humans, language and thinking are the same thing. So Bahasa Indonesia only has one verb tense, the present. In this language, you can specifically reference tomorrow or yesterday, but it's not possible to talk about the past or the future in general terms. Whether an event happens 100 years ago or next week, you speak of it as if it is happening right now. All else is context. So I get that this observation holds for a lot of Asian languages, but I think it's fair to observe that we Westerners are able to detect something ineffably different about a lot of Asian culture. And maybe this is it. When the language of your mind compartmentalizes time into the infinite past and future, it takes a lot of training and discipline to occupy the thin slice of time in between them where we actually live. But when the language of your mind is constrained to the present tense, you lose a lot of descriptive power about past and future, but maybe the trade-off is that living in the moment, which seems to be the root of all kinds of performance and frankly, a lot of happiness in life, becomes effortless. So interesting and maybe a lesson worth learning. Recording alert here, just a heads up, we record these calls so that we can share the call video with you afterwards. Website subscribers can watch calls that they missed attending. Otherwise, only registrants for this call have access to the video. Now, we also take clips from that video for broader distribution. If you're in one, we will always get your permission before sharing them to any kind of social media. No means no, and we're pretty careful about that. So if you do happen to blurt out something important like Grandma's secret cookie recipe, just give me the heads up after the call, and we'll kill that segment before we release the full call video. Let's see who's here. Everybody here actually has met me and knows the backstory, so I'll stream through it real fast. Welcome to Ringknocker. You made it. This is Ringknocker Virtual Meetup number 62, which is just astonishing. I can't believe we've been doing this almost every week for so long. We've been doing it for now pushing 1.5 years. You know the drill. Started out as a Facebook group, moved to moved to Zoom when COVID hit. Just been doing it every week, and it's been a whole lot of fun. And I think we're going to be doing it for a long time into the future. Why are we here? We support our shipmates. If you're still on active duty, we support you with encouragement, advice, and opportunities. If you already hung up your uniform, we're here to employ you or do business with you. And our guest speaker today is going to have a lot to say about that. How we do it is we tell stories. The joke is many of them true. We talk about needs and opportunities, right? You're out there doing stuff. You need some help to get it done. Probably can't do it on your own. If you went out and did stuff that created opportunities, you got something on offer that the rest of us can use. A Ringknocker virtual meetup is where needs and opportunities meet. So when it's your turn, we'll get your intro or your update, bit of a story. Tell us who you are and how you got here. That's your Ringknocker bio. Tell us what you're working on. What do you need to get it done? And what problems have you solved? Opportunities you've recently created. What have you got to offer? And again, you guys all know me, so I'm gonna skip my personal intro. Hey everybody, nice to see you again. And let's move straight on to the. Hey Admiral, hope you're feeling better. Move straight on to the agenda. The call, as usual, is 90 minutes. I burned about 8 so far. As soon as I'm done with my remarks here, we'll meet Victor and hear his story and get a little Q&A with him. We'll grab new attendees, although I don't think we've got any today, for intros and maybe ping a couple of people for updates and close right on the mark, typically at about 9:30 Eastern. Might even be a little bit early today if we run through things quickly. And then, of course, I'll send out the chat log and everything after the call. If you don't want me to share your contact information, as if I haven't shared it already quite a few times before, just let me know. Anyway, so do you guys realize we're in the 3rd decade of the 21st century? I mean, living in the future, right? One of the neat things about being a tech-savvy veteran in the 3rd decade of the 21st century is that there are lots of tech-savvy veterans from the first 2 decades out there paving the way. So whatever industry you fancy, somebody's out there offering you a hand up. Here's an example. Veterans on Wall Street was founded in 2010 on the idea that many of the skills and cultural values veterans developed in the military, leadership, passion, commitment, the drive to accomplish a mission, have a direct application in the corporate world. VOWS works with military organizations, veteran groups, industry associations, and vendors to build awareness and understanding of how these skills and cultural attributes make military veterans great employees. So today we have a direct demonstration of how the military mindset translates. Our original guest speaker for today was Chris Perkins, Naval Academy 97, who's a co-founder of VOWS. Chris had to attend to an emergency, and with less than a week's notice, and I think in the space of like less than 5 minutes, he found a volunteer to take his watch. That is having his shipmates back. So I'd like to introduce Victor Perez, who's Naval Academy class of 2000, and is a co-founder of the Charlotte chapter of VOWS. Victor is going to introduce us to the services and opportunities that VOWS provides to veterans at all levels of the financial industry. Vic, man, thanks so much for stepping into the breach at the absolute last moment. I really appreciate it, man. And I've heard of VOWS, but have never actually had any kind of an introduction or a conversation about VOWS. So and I came out of the financial industry, so I'm really curious to hear what you have to say, sir. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. So first of all, I was class of 2010, so a little bit younger.
2010, my fault. Added another decade.
All good, all good. So no, I transitioned out of the military. I was a submariner in 2016, and as I was going into the financial services industry, I didn't want to live in New York. You know, Ivan, I know you're up there. I'm not a big fan of that. And I found this great opportunity to be a trader on Wall Street in a very coveted position, but to be doing that from Charlotte, North Carolina. So as I started off my career, the first year, it's like I really struggled to find mentorship and advocates and just people that I could relate to and like go and ask personal questions about how to progress in this industry. And I knew that Veterans on Wall Street existed, but I knew that it was a very New York centric organization. So I reached out to Chris Perkins and I was like, yo, bud, you know, I want to grow this out and expand this down south, would you be okay if I use your trademark and your brand and kind of go off with this? And I think, I think it was just probably one of the many emails that the guy gets every day. And he kind of just like, yeah, sure, sure. So then I went across the street to, some friends at Bank of America. And I was like, hey, let's try to form something here locally. And it was me and three other guys. We got together and started going around town, meeting veterans in the financial services industry and kind of building our network. Now we have over 33 member firms and over 327 veterans. Last time I checked, was probably last week when I looked at the list. But we've built out our little network here in town, and we host quarterly socials and semi-annual speaker events. So next month, we're having a guest speaker, an Army veteran. He's the Chief Community Reinvestment Act officer at Truist Financial, Anthony Weekly. And it's kind of the thing that we've been doing this entire time. We've had Medal of Honor recipients. We've had General Suzanne Valtranot, board of directors of Wells Fargo, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was one of our guest speakers. It's been easy to attract speakers that I never thought would actually come. It's so amazing that when you pick up the phone and you say, hey, I'm a vet, I know you're a veteran, would you help me out and be a guest speaker? People always say yes. I've never had anyone say no. So it's been interesting. And, thankfully I've been successful in my career, but I think being an advocate for veterans on my personal time, I think has really raised awareness both in Charlotte and within the companies that are part of our organization. And it's been good. It's been fun.
So Victor, when you first, did that outreach down in Charlotte, how many veterans did you find? I mean, was there any surprise in terms of how many of us were already in the industry, or what would that look like?
No surprise at all. It was actually a fun process, man. It was, I reached out to like the military support group at Bank of America, and I was like, hey, can I talk to someone there? And they kind of thought it was like a recruiting thing. And then when I talked to the person, I was like, hey, let's go grab beers. We go grab beers, and then it's like become best friends. And ironically, everyone in this group they're the people that, when I have personal news to share, they're the ones that I'm texting. When I get together with someone on the weekend, they're the ones I'm going out with. It becomes like your core, I don't want to say social group, but it is. It's your network.
So let me level set here for a second. Now, what do you do in finance? Like, I don't think you're a retail guy, right? You're more on the back end, right?
I'm a credit derivatives trader. So it's, I'm essentially a macro trader. I get into the office around 6 something, and I start looking at futures, where the market is. I kind of start turn on my machine, and I start trading. I trade about $4 billion worth of product every day. But I'm essentially a macro trader. I kind of take a view on where the market is going for the day, and then I kind of position myself for that while making a market for clients. So I'm always showing prices that I'm willing to buy and sell at, and then customers can come in and they can just lift me or hit me, and I'm just constantly trying to make sure that as I'm doing that, I'm making money in between and keeping the position that I want to keep. It's a stressful job because you're tied to your desk, till 4 or 5 p.m. Sometimes I don't even get up, but it's very rewarding. And it's very, I guess what was interesting about this career field was every time as I was looking for a job, right? Every trader that I spoke to had an opinion about everything. I spent all day talking to people around the world, hearing their stories, hearing why they have this view of the market and where the market's going, or how they perceive this macroeconomic event, or why they perceive that rates are going lower, rates are going higher. And it's just interesting. It's like you become very knowledgeable and very, I guess I don't know what the word would be, but it's over time you become, I guess, well-versed on a variety of things.
So Vic, this is, I want to dig into this a little bit, right? Because coming from the outside, right? Somebody who's not in finance, a military officer who's thinking about, what to do next. I think that the public view of finance in the trading world really kind of centers around the retail side, right? So, you think about being a broker, right? Which is effectively you're in sales, right? And what you do, and I would imagine a lot of the guys that you're associated with in the chapter is really, it's on the back end, right? You guys are on the trading screens. You're doing something that's really fundamentally different, from the guy out there selling mutual funds or ETFs or what have you, right? So can you talk a little bit about, I think we all understand how military experience can kind of translate into sales, right? Like you relate to people, you solve problems and all the rest of it, right? But can you talk a little bit about how the experience that a vet carries out of the service, especially an officer carries out of the service, how does that translate to the trading floor? Like, did it give you any kind of an advantage?
I think it's irrelevant whether you're an officer or enlisted. I think it's more the skills that you gain in the military, right? I think it's your tenacity, your ability to work in teams, your problem-solving abilities, kind of the message to Garcia. I had an MBA from a.
You might want to explain that to our Army brothers here, man.
No, I think they know what message to Garcia is. They're not dragging their knuckles that much. I think the value of veteran is kind of almost, I want to say it's intangible, but it's visible, right? For example, when I started in this job, I had no idea what a CDS was, right? A credit default swap, right? Everyone's seen that movie that from 2008. What's it called? The Big Short. That's what I trade. And everyone, it has a very negative connotation to it. And I'm like, well, you're not educated on the product, but I started on the desk, and within 6 months, I was actively trading and market making. And, behind me was a guy who was a trader who had been on the desk for 2 years and still was fetching coffee and not trading. And I think the difference is, first of all, I was older. I was tenacious. Every time my boss was getting up to go to the restroom, I was like, hey, boss, I could do this for the next 2 minutes while you come back. Like, let me try it for 2 minutes. What could go wrong in 2 minutes? A lot could go wrong in 2 minutes, by the way, in investment markets. But thankfully, it never happened. Once I knew that I was going to be a CDS trader, I picked up the technical manuals, and I was like, okay, I'm going to become a master of my trade. I need to know this product inside and out, because when people ask me questions, I want to say, hey, this is how it works. And in less than 6 months, I was the guy. And it was just because I proved to them that, hey, I knew the product. I was able to back my boss up. And those things were kind of, they're not used to a young person coming onto the trading floor with that attitude. And I think
you're willing to take the watch.
It's like, yeah, man, like train your relief, and by the way, training your relief is not something that you see in corporate America. And when you are seeking someone to replace and mentoring the young below you, people respect that. I have a lot of young, traders and salespeople on the trading floor that come to me for advice because they know I'm always there to mentor them. Like today, my junior trader was like, hey, can we go grab lunch together? I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's go for a quick walk. And he had just career questions that he wanted to discuss. And, he didn't feel comfortable going to our boss, but he wanted it from me, knowing that I'm someone that is trustworthy and I've been doing it right. I've been doing well. So he kind of wants to go down that path.
So if I'm a young officer and if only if I'm a young officer and I'm getting ready to resign my commission and move out into the world, how do I approach this decision? Like, what is my indicator that I want to get onto the trading floor as opposed to go and doing something completely different? Like, how do I know that I'm suited for it?
I think you have to have a genuine interest in finance. I think going to if you go on to business school, or if you have your CFA, your Chartered Financial Analyst certification, or CAIA, Chartered Alternative Investment Analyst, those are indications that, hey, you have a genuine interest in business. First of all, you understand the concept of trading. And that would be a way for you to land on the trading floor. So getting onto the trading floor itself is, we call that front office, as either a trader or a salesperson is a rather tough.
That was my next question. Like, how do you actually get there?
So usually the best way for veterans transitioning out is via a veteran transition program, right? So I came in through the Veteran Employment Transition Program from Wells Fargo, but that was modeled after the Goldman Sachs program. It's called their VIP program, Veteran Integration Program. Every major bank has one nowadays. So that's probably your best avenue to do it without an MBA or without any of those certifications. The thing that I really want to stress is there are many types of jobs and roles at a bank, right? You could be a project manager, you could work in operations, you could be in consulting, you could be in strategy. There are an infinite number of opportunities that are still in the financial services industry that are kind of overlooked and people are unaware of. So that's kind of the thing that we try to do, is to say, hey, consider applying to a bank, because these are the job opportunities that are out there. Something's going to fit your personality and your desires. Within our network of veterans Veterans on Wall Street, you're going to find someone in that field that you could always talk to and approach and get advice from, and to learn. Honestly, when you go to these interviews, you want to have an idea of what that role that you're interviewing for is all about. And I think without having a mentor, you're not set up for success.
So mentors, is that, I would imagine that's a call it a service that that VOWS provides, right? Is to hook a young candidate up with somebody who's in the industry.
So Veterans on Wall Street, our goals is kind of twofold, right? Our goal is first primarily to help veterans that are transitioning out of the service to find a place in the financial services industry. And then our second goal is just to be a social network for veterans in the financial services industry, right? So right now, let's say that if I wanted to leave my current role, I have a network of veterans that know me already, that know what I do. They understand the job that I've been doing, the experiences that I have, and hey, maybe there's an opportunity for you here. That's part of it. But the primary reason for Veterans on Wall Street is to help those that are transitioning out break into Wall Street.
How many years have you been doing this now with the Charlotte chapter?
So I started in October of 2017.
2017. So that's 4 years, right? Have you seen anything change? Has the traffic increased?
Absolutely. So like? Our membership has increased year over year. We have more member firms joining. Member firms are becoming more active. I have people from other major banks calling me directly saying, hey, I want to hire someone. Who do you know that's out there looking? I talk to about 2 veterans a week on average that are transitioning. So it's it's a time consuming, but it's kind of the passion. And through that, it's like, hey, if someone tells you, hey, I want to go work at this place, or I want to do this, I already know who's there. And it's an easy, hey, let me send you an email introduction to this person, and boom, they go. Same way that, Chris picked up the phone, texted me and said, hey, Vic, can you do this? Roger that. I got it. It's that kind of relationship that we have. It's beneficial. I mean, in corporate America, that doesn't exist, where people are that direct and that responsive. So it's a benefit that we have.
It's a great back channel. Now, and I guess you guys, it sounds like you guys were the first chapter, like external chapter of VOWS, or were there
Correct. We're the first external chapter outside of New York City, and we're actually the most active chapter.
They've got a few now. Apparently the model works, right?
The model works, yeah. So a couple cities have reached out to me to figure out how we were successful, and it's been great helping other cities pop up. The model does work, and you start to be noticed by the community. We were recognized by the Charlotte Business Journal. People recognize, especially nowadays when there's a big push for diversity and inclusion, they recognize, one, the value that veterans bring, and 2, that the veteran population is the most diverse population there is, right? We represent all races, gender, sexuality, every aspect of the diverse segments, we represent it. And that's a benefit that I don't think companies recognize initially. And as they engage with us and they realize that, they start to realize the value bringing on more veterans.
Plus, we're just a huge group of people. I mean, this is a number that always astonishes me, and it's been consistent since at least the beginning of the Vietnam War. Every year, our country produces 17,000 new former military officers. Right? I mean, that's a huge, that's a fire hose of people coming out every year. They all got to do something, right?
Correct.
Outstanding. Well, let me open up the floor a little bit and offer any questions from the group here for Vic on vows.
Victor, what so there's chapter activities, but there's also kind of national activities too, right? Are there multiple mailing lists? Are there mailing lists for chapters, and
we have multiple
mailing
lists. I would say that essentially every chapter has their own activities. But the Veteran on Wall Street chapter in New York, every year we host an annual symposium. It's called the Veteran Symposium.
Yep.
It's a 2-day event. So this year, I think it's November. It's gonna be whatever the Thursday, Friday, the first week of November would be. And then that's basically, we're going to do a bunch of panels. We're going to have guest speakers on career transition, how to interview, how to build your resume. We're going to have practice interviews. And then on Monday, we're going to have our annual Stand Up for Heroes concert. And that's actually, in the past, has been at Madison Square Gardens. This year, we're doing it at the one of the Juilliard schools auditorium. I think it's the Antony Auditorium. And I mean, we've had, U2, Jon Stewart, big names, Prince Harry. It draws quite a crowd. You'll be surprised at how many major artists are supporters of Veterans on Wall Street and the Bob Woodward Foundation. So the Bob Woodward Foundation is the organization that we partner with for making our social impact. Anytime that we receive donations and sponsors, the money goes to the Bob Woodward Foundation, and the Bob Woodward Foundation uses those funds to do their all the positive impact that we do.
Cool.
Vic, we've talked a lot about the let's call it the front end of vows, right? Where you got transitioning officers coming out and finding careers. What about the back end? So I go work for a big bank and whatnot. At some point, I may want to start my own farm, start my own fund. Do you have members who have come out the back end and are looking to do their own thing now? Is that a thing with you guys yet?
Absolutely. We have a few members that have started their own firms and are very, very successful.
So that's an interesting connection we can make. I got Jeff Evanson just below you on my screen. Jeff is a senior coach at the Lions Pride, which is a Bill Watkins 10X accelerator for founder CEOs. And the Lions Pride has just launched their Onward initiative, which is here, Jeff, I'll let you tell Victor about it. But it's interesting to me that we could make a potential connection there.
Thanks for that, Jason. It's funny that you asked that question, because that was going to be my question too.
There you go.
Beat me to the punch. So the Onward initiative is a way for us to give back to the veteran community. So we've got Lions Pride is a group of coaches who are helping some veterans, not all veterans, but veteran business owners accelerate their business, optimize their lives, at the same time. And we have an opportunity, as we bring new people into the cohort, to offer to someone who couldn't afford and couldn't otherwise be part of our cohort, the ability to get access to our content for a year, free of charge. And the only qualifications are that they have to be a veteran, and they have to be they can't be pre-revenue. So we have as we bring new people on, we're looking for small business owners who are veterans, who are looking to accelerate their business. Maybe they're in a stage where they can't afford a $1,500 a month investment in themselves, but they probably need some help, moving to the next level. And if you all know folks like that, send them towards the Lions Pride website, and they can sign up, and we can review their application. Part of that application process will be to actually present to Ringknocker community
Good
and
to hear.
explain what they're doing, and then we can kind of give the old Roman, judgment on, thumbs up, thumbs down type judgment on how they do. So look forward to that. And Jason, thanks for allowing me to chat about that. And Victor, appreciate your presentation today. It's really an interesting. I was in a previous life, I was an equity trader, institutional equity trader. So I know your world. It's great.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, I think I actually grabbed coffee with a small business owner, a veteran. He's not an academy grad. He was enlisted, but I think he might actually be a perfect candidate for your organization. So connect with you offline.
Right on. I'll dump
that's
the link to the application in the chat while we're going.
Cool.
That's cool. Hey, Victor, so how sometimes they say, get your foot in the door and then you can go wherever you want. What does the lateral move look like in finance, right? If I come in and as a transitioning officer, and I said, I know how to manage a project. Let me get into Wells Fargo as a project manager, and I want to eventually make my way to the trading floor. Does that happen, or do I really need to be kind of laser focused on where I'm going and get there as quickly as possible?
I think it helps if you go in laser focused.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get there on the first try, it's a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
You have to start doing the lateral moves. It actually requires quite a bit of work, but it's doable. It happens, and it happens often. But it's a lot easier if you get in on the first go around.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. So here, let me step out of the way again. Any other questions for Vic?
Yeah,
Hey,
Victor.
You take it, Dennis.
I think it's Greg.
Oh, Greg. All right.
And then
It's me. Yeah. I was like, okay, so I know a little bit about trading and Fibonacci and all this kind of stuff. So you're coming up against your time in the Navy. How did you decide, okay, I want to go into finance and I want to do trading? There's a good story there.
Yeah, it's called debt, student loans. I had every intention. Truth. I had every intention of being a career naval officer. When I got assigned to be ROTC instructor at Notre Dame, I went and got my MBA from University of Chicago. I kind of wanted to hold out and sign my department head contract at the very end. Like I didn't see the need to rush to sign a contract. And in doing so, I basically said, hey, I'm going to pay for my MBA on my own. And it was
at the University of Chicago.
At the University of Chicago. So I was I hadn't been at my 5-year mark yet to get my, I hadn't gotten to my 5-year mark yet to get my GI Bill. I didn't, it's a yellow ribbon school, but I was on active duty, so I didn't qualify for the yellow ribbon. I got a major scholarship from a major foundation, which I will not name. But when they found out that I was a part-time student, although taking a full-time course load throughout the entire time, they retracted their scholarship. So I basically just took out student loans. And when I got towards the end, I looked back and I was like, there's no way I could be a commander or a captain and still pay this off. And so I was like, I started talking to my friends at school and I was like, hey, what do you guys recommend? And I had friends at Goldman Sachs and other major financial firms. And they were like, look into these veteran programs. So that's what got me looking around. And then I fell upon Wells Fargo and I heard that they were starting their veteran program. They were looking for their first class, their first cohort. And I got introduced to a couple people and, kind of made my way there. But I mean, like I said, I didn't know what a CDS was. I didn't know what, trading was or how it worked or, investment banking, none of that. It was kind of like, okay, I'm about to get married. I have these student loans on my back and I need to make a lot of money. So here I go, head first. It worked.
Wow. I was going to ask you about this actually. When I looked at your bio, I saw that you were helping to run the ROTC program at Notre Dame, but going to night school in Chicago. Were you making that commute every day?
Not every day. Mostly. So I taught on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I would sometimes take do like weekday program stuff or weekday stuff, but normally Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I would just spend the weekend there.
Yeah,
So
that's a full schedule.
Drive or take the train. I mean, I was going any way that I could. If I had homework to do, I'd take the train. If the
And
flight,
such a beautiful neighborhood in Chicago to get off the train too. Holy cow!
Well, I was. So there's a Gleacher Center in downtown, right off of Millennium or Michigan.
Oh,
Avenue.
okay.
So that's normally where I took my night and weekend classes. If I took a Friday course, you're right, it was down south.
Yeah, that is. Those are two very different planets.
Yeah.
The Gleacher Center by the river and the University of Chicago down on the south side. I mean, the good news is that the muzzle flashes will light your way. If one of the street lights is out as you're trying to get to your car in the parking lot, but it's still kind of scary. Wow. So how long did that go on? That course of study?
Less than 2 years. I finished it faster than most full-time students.
Didn't like that South Side experience, did you? You want to get it over as quickly as possible?
I just wanted to get the MBA over with. I don't see the purpose of staying in school forever,
Amen, brother. Wow.
Victor, I've got a question for you. Based on your experience now in the financial space, what have been the biggest barriers to success for transitioning military veterans?
I think having mentored a bunch of veterans after me and seeing other veterans in other firms, I think one of the biggest hindrances for veterans is sometimes our own attitude. It's kind of having that chip on our shoulder, like, oh, I was a company commander, I was, I led a platoon here, and you kind of come in with this attitude where you assume you're going to go and take charge right when you start off in this industry. But the fact is, you're starting over fresh. You are starting from the bottom all over again. And I think it's hard sometimes for us to accept that. But the sooner you could accept that and the sooner that you can be humble about it, I think the faster you'll find success in your new career.
Yeah, probably harder as the rank rises, right?
It does actually. It does get harder the more senior you go because you become accustomed to it.
Yeah.
I do some work with one of the big 5 consulting firms, and that's kind of what I've seen as well. The guys and gals that come in with that humility do a lot better. So no, I appreciate that, Victor. Thanks.
Welcome.
I placed military veterans for 16 years, and you hit the nail on the head. I used to have to tell them, take a deep breath, and like, hey, you may have 8 years in the military, but you have 0 years in this industry you're trying to break into.
Yeah. A little curious, actually, Ivan. Now you're an officer recruiter in Manhattan. Have I got that right? So do you see? This has got to be rare, but I'm sure it happens. Do you see guys coming out of finance and looking to come into the military? Does that happen? Like failed traders, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so this week there was someone who has an MBA in Harvard, and he works in McKinsey, and he wants to be a pilot. Unfortunately, his age was like above the age limit, but he wants to get out of finance and get into aviation. But yeah, there are some. Yeah. Well, I don't know if that person knows about the pay cut, but
should mention that, huh? Wow. I mean, it's interesting because I could imagine that the thing that we just talked about, right? This attitude, right? This sense of, call it entitlement, would probably apply in the opposite direction too, right? If you were a Wall Street trader and McKinsey and all the rest of it, you might walk into your first division, with a bit of an expectation of something, which would last about a microsecond, right? But yeah, what an experience that would be. Okay, let's see. Anybody?
For your Val
go ahead.
If it's useful for your Val folks, I put together an electronic transition workbook that they could download for free to think about transition from military service really into a new career. And I could send you the link for that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. That'd be great.
Dennis,
Yeah.
can I get that one too, since I'm transitioning?
Yeah. I'll just throw it in the chat right now.
Sorry.
And if you're looking for transition resources, John Cordell, who hasn't been on in a while, but his buddy, along with his buddy Jeff Bacon, who's the creator of the Broadside cartoon, they put together a transition manual that you search military transition and Broadside on. Oh, have you got it? You held it up, but your background hid it from us, Dennis. But yeah, that's definitely worth the price of admission right there. Just for the comics alone, it's worth it, you know. But yeah, good free gift. I wonder if you could do something for us here, and this we'll definitely take a clip of this. You're a CDS trader. Virtually nobody but other CDS traders really understands what a credit default swap is. Could you give us 2 minutes and kind of break that down for us?
Absolutely.
What is one of those things, and how do they fit into the ecosystem?
So we said, I said earlier that companies, when they need cash, they'll kind of say, hey, I'm going to go and issue a bond, right? Where investors will give the company money, and the company vows to, promises to give them a coupon payment, say, 3%, every year for the next 10 years, and then they pay back the investors. Mm-hmm. Let's say that you are an investor, a very wealthy investor, and you own $100 million of bonds from this company X. And all of a sudden you start to think, crap, if they go out of business or they go bankrupt, I just lost $100 million. So the only other thing you could buy to protect you for the downside is called a credit default swap. So a credit default swap is essentially insurance on a bond. So if you buy $100 million protection on that very same bond, let's say that the company goes bankrupt and that bond, which was, worth par. So, say $1 for easy terms, but $1,000, right? Each bond. And investors are then, through the bankruptcy process, only get $300 on their $1,000 investment. The CDS will pay out the additional $700. So you're made whole.
Only if the bond issuer.
So the bond through the
that's the default part of a CDS, right? Is when the bond issuer defaults, that's when it pays out.
Correct.
So who's issuing the insurance? How does that work? Who's paying in that case?
So if you're buying protection, you are paying a coupon to the protection seller for having that protection.
Or the institutions that create that insurance policy, they usually, AIG had was big time before the financial crisis.
Mostly the broker dealers that we talked about, investment.
But
banks.
it's not always an insurer that's.
No.
Yeah.
Right. It's a contract that you just make, that you write.
And I guess that thing becomes a security because it's tradable.
Contract is a tradable.
That was my next question, right? So that contract, irrespective of whether the issuer ultimately goes, defaults, that contract is itself an asset that can then be traded on, some derivatives exchange.
So let's say that, like I said, throughout the day, I'm streaming prices at which I will buy and sell every security. I'm live prices, and I'm always changing my prices depending on what stocks are doing. But let's say that someone hits me on 100 million investment grade CDX. I immediately get really aggressive on my offer, and then someone else will lift me on 150 million CDX. So my net exposure is 50 million long. I'll start bidding again. Someone will hit me on 50, and boom, I'm back to neutral. Essentially, all three of those trades are then torn up at the end of the week, and I have, the contracts are essentially torn up. I've made the profit in between.
So I don't want to dig too far in the weeds here. I come out of the options world, right? So in in equity options, there are a number of pricing models that tell us sort of, what's the theoretical price of this thing. And I've at least got a point of comparison when I see the price on the screen to know whether it's overpriced or underpriced, right? So do you have something similar in the CDS world? Is there some way of sort of theoretically pricing those things, or are you just winging it?
So I trade the index, which is a macro, right? It's a basket of single name CDSs. But for the individual corporate CDSs, I guess you could always look at your Z spread or your I spread on the bond and determine, whether the CDS is cheap or rich to the underlying risk of the bond.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. But certainly there's no Black-Scholes model for CDS or anything like that. It's
no, there's no
bit more seat of your pants, right?
No.
Yeah. Interesting. So then that must be part of the education, right? Like when you're learning to trade, there must be a lot of rules of thumb, and there's got to be some sort of a process that you have to undergo in order to make your trading decisions, right? Can't all be seat of the pants.
I think you have to have an idea of where the market is going. So you want to position yourself for the direction that you want to go. But you also have to know like your net exposure. So when I started, I was very much like, I got hit on 10 million. I need to sell 10 million. I got hit, on 50, I got to sell 50. And then as I progressed, I cared less about the amount notional that I got hit on. And I cared about my net risk overall in my entire portfolio. And I've been much more profitable doing it that way and having more of I don't care that I got hit on this one index. I need to sell that index. It's like, okay, if I got hit on that index, how does that change the way that my entire portfolio would behave right now in this market? And once I got that under my belt, it's been just a game changer.
Now, I know a couple of professional.
How many traders are trading?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'd say how many traders are trading that same index just within your institution, within Wells Fargo?
Just me.
What happens when you go on vacation?
My boss.
Oh, okay. I mean, but literally he sits at the screen.
Right now.
What's that?
There's a shortage of index traders. There's only about less than 20 of us in the country, and a few of the major.
The part where I stomped my foot.
Just lost the major traders to hedge funds.
Wow. Vic, I know a number of professional poker players who will talk about how they in order to be a winning poker player, they have to care more about their process than they do about the outcome of any given hand. And it sounds like when you talked about caring about managing your portfolio as opposed to a single position, that something similar applies there, right? If your process is good, then even if you lose on a given day, you can expect to do well in the long term. Is that
absolutely? Yeah? I think there are sometimes markets that are very one way, that no matter what, even if you take a small loss, it's better to take a small loss than to hold that position, keep getting smushed, and just get blown up. There are days that I have the right position, but as a market maker, my job is to be on during the market hours. The position gets taken away from me. Customers want the risk that you have, and in those times, I sometimes will take a small loss to get my position back, knowing that the overall position that I have is the winning trade, not so much the couple pennies that I just lost on those individual trades.
So it sounds like the enemy of success in your job is passion, right? Is emotion. And you've been doing this for a while. How long did it take you to reach a point where you weren't driven to make decisions based on fear and greed? Or is that still the case?
No, I don't have fear or greed when I trade. I have my goal, my daily profit goals. Usually when I get to my goal, or if I really will surpass it, I kind of do like, okay, let me just lock this in and just chill the rest of the day, kind of make myself where I'm not a player, I'm not involved in the market. unless I have, like sometimes you get bored and you kind of say, okay,
Start doing stuff.
what customers are doing, and you try to position yourself. But for the most part, I think it's just, it's more about walking in the morning. You have an opinion by the time you sit down at your chair. And I guess what you care more about is, was I right or was I wrong in my opinion? And sometimes you become so stubborn when you see that, hey, I was wrong, and you still try to play that position. Sometimes realizing that, hey, you're wrong, and just flipping your position is probably the right answer. And that's probably the struggle that I sometimes have.
There's a lot of crypto traders out here on Volley, and over the last couple of months, we've seen a little bit of volatility in that market. And I have to say that many of my neighbors have had some difficulty displaying that certain level of zen that you're describing. I mean, how do you when the market really heats up, how do you maintain a level of dispassion?
I think that's part of the. I think the product is unique to you're either made for the product or not. I think in this case, like if you are too emotional and you can't handle it, it's probably not the product for you.
Are CDSs, are they particularly volatile, or just more so say than other asset classes, or?
I think that they're active. I wouldn't say that they're volatile. Obviously, if there's news in a sector, that's going to move the CDSs in that sector. As you know, energy has always been a very topical sector. The index, major macro news, that's something that's active. When President Trump took office and Twitter became a thing, I actually had to download Twitter because every time he tweeted, it affected the market.
The market moved. Yeah.
That was something that I was not accustomed to.
Yeah.
And my during that time, my fear was, what tweet am I going to miss? Like I had to figure out how to allocate my phone right there where I could always see only Trump tweets. It was just like, what's he saying that's going to move this market that I need to worry about? Man
had a lot of followers.
Now that he's no longer in office, I no longer have Twitter, and I'm much calmer trader. Now things are a little more as expected.
Yeah. So listen, I'm a big fan of Nassim Taleb and Black Swan and Fooled by Randomness and the whole notion of anti-fragility, right? It's something we've discussed on and off over here at Ringknocker, and I'd be curious. So Taleb talks about two sort of distinctly different kinds of risk, right? I mean, you've got your everyday risk. I might win some, I might lose some, carry on the next day. But then he distinguishes that from what he calls the risk of ruin, right? Where if that one hits you, there's no coming back, right? You can't, you've lost your bankroll, and there will be no tomorrow. So can you talk a little bit about risk within the context of trading? I mean, real trading, right? I mean, you guys are out there in the trenches, right? This isn't just trying to figure out which ETFs to put in your portfolio, right? So can you talk a bit about the different kinds of risk that you face, and if it makes sense to you, can you talk a little bit about this distinction between risk of ruin, right? I'm going to lose everything, versus the more normal kinds of risk, the ups and downs that you face on a daily basis, and how do you alter your behavior to deal with the different varieties of risk? How do you work through that?
I think as professional traders, we always operate within the confines of our risk limits. Every institution has different risk limits, and the risk limits are designed to prevent you from risk of ruin. And in a more macro sense, senior management is very much aware of how you are positioned and how other people are positioned. And they'll make sure that no two people or multiple people are in the same trade, that if something went sideways, could cause a major impact to the firm.
Interesting. So how does that work? You get a Slack notification when you place a trade? Nope, can't do that one, or Yeah, really?
Immediately. Absolutely.
Interesting.
I've sometimes overtraded, stocks. There's like daily notional limits on how much you can trade in one day. Sometimes I'm buying and selling, and I hit my peak, and I'll get an email like, "Hey, you're done," and I'm like, "What do you mean I'm
like
done?"
An overall volume limit.
Correct.
Kind of
And they're just like, "You're capped off today." I'm like, "What do you mean I'm capped off? I need more room." And they're like, "Go talk to your manager." I'm like, "Hey, boss, I need more room." Or there's also like, "Hey, you're long this stock. This person's long this stock, and this person's long this stock. Nobody else is long this stock anymore, right?"
Everybody had the same idea.
You're only staring at your book, right?
Yeah.
You're not really aware. You're talking to people and stuff like that, but you're not always aware of what people's other positions are and how things change during the day. But there's a risk management team that's their job. They're watching everyone's portfolio and how it's changing. And that's the cool thing about our desk, is that our portfolio changes a lot drastically. It changes drastically every day throughout the day. Like you can.
So is risk management front running your orders?
No.
Between the order and execution?
No. They give you a lot of rope. But as you start to approach your rope, that's when they start to lean in.
Okay. So when you hit something like that, sorry guys, but this is the nuts and bolts always interest me. So when you hit something like that volume limit that you described, can that actually prevent you from exiting a position?
It can.
That's got to be an uncomfortable place to be.
Almost immediately, I'll pick up the phone, I'll call my manager. My manager will call his manager, and I'll say, "Hey, I need an exemption. I need to raise this," and they'll raise it for you.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And I would assume it's a risk management position, kind of like you described, right? If it's because we got too many long positions on this security across the portfolio, they might raise it if you're going in the other direction, or
right. Yeah. I need to I want to.
Okay, I need to raise it, but you're only allowed to raise it. We'll only raise it for the purpose of going in the other direction.
Right. Sometimes like I said, we're market making where clients are hitting and lifting us. And sometimes we get put into a position that we didn't want in the first place that will throw us over limits. In that case, there's usually a grace period for how long you could be over your limits, right? So usually, within a few days, you want to get out of that position. So you don't have to move out of it immediately. There are intraday limits and there are intraday limits.
Here's an interesting question. So, I mean, there are certain markets that that move every tick, right? And you got to be right on top of them. But what I think I just heard is that this market moves at a little bit more of a sedate pace. Is that the case?
The single name CDS market does. The index is tick by tick.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that you hold a set of positions. You're inside your risk limit. The black swan bites you, right? And the bottom falls out. So at that point, are you fired? or does the fact that you managed to that this happened while you were inside your risk limits, is that some sort of a protection for you? Like how does that work in real life?
You are still responsible for the performance of your book. Gotcha.
All right. So you still got to protect yourself. And all right, so that takes us back to that question of risk then, right? Because you've got risk management that's, they're paying attention to the macro, and I presume that their real focus is on firm risk, right? Risk at the level of the firm rather than so much the level of the individual trader. But there are certain risks where if you take them, it's going to be a race between can you get rich before you get broke, right? And so when you're thinking about the risk that you take on at an individual level, are you out there in front of risk management, or are you having different thoughts than they think? Like, can you tease that apart a little bit?
Our job is to market make, right? So I'm constantly making a market for my clients to provide them the liquidity that they need to move the risk that they want. And then it's positioning myself to anticipate what the clients are going to do and have the position ready to be able to move the risk in their favor. So let's say that I have a feeling that customers are going to want to buy risk today. So I'm going to try to come into the day long because I know that customers are going to come in to buy and they're going to lift me out of my risk and take me short, right? So it's kind of you're not trying to be reactionary. You want to be proactive in this business.
So I think that the most interesting piece of your answer is going to be one that might require a little bit of explanation for everybody else who's going to see this who isn't actually here right now. Can you please explain, Vic, what is the difference between a market maker and everybody on the outside of the ring there?
Correct. So usually you're dealing with institutional investors and clients that they are not making markets. If they want to buy something, they just like lift your offer and they bought it, or they can hit your bid and they sell it. As a market maker, every major dealer is putting out prices. I will buy here and sell here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, as a client, you're going to find the inside market, and that's where you're going to interact. So every bank is moving their prices around all day. And then sometimes some people only maybe they have a relationship with one bank and, hey, I trade with this bank. Others are, I only see these 4 banks, and whichever is best is one that I'm going to trade with, whatever the reason. But market makers are making two-way markets. They will buy and sell live, and clients can come in and buy and sell.
So my mental image of the market maker is you're the bookie, right? You're the bookie at the track who's accepting all the bets in either direction, and your job is to balance your book so that good day or bad day, you make your money on the VIG, so more so than on winning or losing the bets. Is that
no? I would not
accurate
say
at all?
we're bookies. I would say that we're facilitators and we provide them liquidity.
Fair enough. All right. Yeah, it's a whole different world for people coming in from the outside.
Do you make money on fees or on the spreads?
Spreads.
Not you, on the spreads.
On the spread, yeah. And are the spreads very wide in the swap world?
The electronification of the whole process. Everything just spreads have diminished.
I took a look at, like I said, a lot of crypto traders out here, and they just started. A couple of exchanges have just started issuing options on cryptocurrencies. Puts and calls on cryptocurrencies, and so I've taken a look a couple of times at those markets, and the spreads are 40%, 50%. It's unbelievably huge.
So what happens when the spreads get completely beat close to zero? Does that mean you no longer really need a market maker, an intermediary?
No, that just means that you have to make your money either by volume or by positioning, right? So if I think the market's going to be going higher, I'm going to just inherently stay long.
I'm not thinking as much about your firm as I am about the function in the market.
Sorry, so you're saying,
well,
why does a market maker come into work if the spread is close to zero?
It's her job.
Fair enough.
Well, why doesn't the bank exit the business?
Because it's a service you're providing to clients, right? You want to be a full service firm, right?
I guess the notion is that the spread won't stay zero forever.
There are some competitors that will cross themselves. So they will sell it where you'd be buying it just so they could get the business from their clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all just, okay, we got more business with this client.
That seems like it would, it's literally a losing proposition, but it seems, that doesn't seem like a great business model.
You might be losing in that trade, but you might be getting business elsewhere in the bank.
Keeping the business, yeah.
In-house, right?
Yeah. Interesting. And so again, apologies, folks, but I can do this all day long. You said that you are the market maker for CDX at your firm. Is that common? Like there's usually just sort of one person for each asset class doing that, or?
It's usually a senior trader and a junior. So when I started, I was the junior for my boss. My boss was the index trader and the single name trader. And then as I matured, it was more like, okay, you become the index trader. I'll focus on the single name side of the business. And if I ever need help or anything, he's always right there. But
now, does it happen that
other firms usually have a senior and a junior?
Does it happen that for say a thinly traded asset class, one person might manage more than one asset class, or does that split your attention so much that it just doesn't work?
The index requires constant supervision. So when they hired me, they were like, wait, so you were the reactor officer on a submarine? I was like, yeah, I would stare at pressure and temperature all day. And they were like, that's great.
Oh, you're perfect for this.
I want you to stare at rates and stocks all day.
I think we've just nailed the job requirement. That's awesome.
I mean, that was literally the joke that we had on why they hired me.
All right. Yeah, they teach that in nuke school, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. What about all right, you have your time.
That's all you have to know to get through nuke school?
That's it.
No, as I understand it, the one thing that you have to be able to do at nuke school is to take notes really fast, because as I understand it, they write with one hand and erase with the other. Is that the case?
I can't remember that far back. I try to blow it out of my life.
Vic, what about the math? Like, do you have you got a background in statistical mechanics, or like how much of a quant do you have to be in order to actually do this for a living?
Basic math, in my opinion.
Like baseball statistics kind of thing, or
you just have to know some thumb rules, and I could do math quickly in my head. Like sometimes I'll get hit on.
You gotta be quick, huh?
Yeah, like I mean, I will in the span of a minute, I will sometimes do 10, 15 trades, and I have to know what my net exposure is at the end of those 15 trades. While the risk is still trying to populate through my system and my computer's trying to update on my risk and stuff like that, I have to know it because I'm the one that's making the decisions without it having updated. So it's just being able to keep track of that,
Okay, serious question here. Tell me if I need to turn the video off on this one. 15 trades a minute. Are you making decisions? I mean, are you making, what side of your brain are you operating? Are those analytic decisions, or do you have a well-trained gut?
So we actually get statistics on this every quarter, and my average response time to a trade inquiry is 2.4 seconds. So I will decide in 2.4 seconds, how bad do I want the risk, what price I'm going to put onto it, how that affects my risk. And I type it in and send it.
Is there a decision tree? Like it just seems like when things happen that fast, you must have a mental checklist.
I do. So I determine how am I positioned at the moment, right? So if I'm already long, I don't want to get longer per se. If it's a small trade, I'll take it. What's an extra million or two or 10, whatever, it doesn't really matter, right? But now if someone comes in on 35, on 50, I'm gonna be like, I'm not gonna win that one, and I'll just put a really crappy bid because I don't want it. But if it's something that's going to reduce my risk and I'm going to lock in a profit, I'm like, I'll just do mid, or I give, through mid, or just whatever I want to move my risk and make me more flexible. The idea is to maintain myself flexible and kind of anticipate where the next trade's going to go.
So let me poke at something. So you said maybe I'm already long. So in the options world, I'm tracking a lot of metrics, right? I could be long delta, short gamma. I could be balanced theta. Like there are a lot of different ways that I can be long and short. Is it the same in your case? Are you tracking a whole bunch of different metrics and having to balance opposing risks, or are the numbers?
I usually track my CRO1, but since I have different products, I have high yield and IG. I know that and investment grade. You know that each product behaves differently, right? So you can't just go off the CRO1. You also have to account for how is it going to move in this market.
You probably don't even see time passing during the day, do you?
Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, it's like blink and the day's over.
Yeah.
Holy cow. All right. Well, this, I'm glad we went here, Vic. I mean, I'm very, very interested in vows and that whole thing for the transition officers.
Creating CDS.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating. I mean, the nuts and bolts of how people do things. It is its own version of running a reactor, right? I mean, just intensely curious. Anybody else got any questions about this? I mean, let's geek out here.
And Jason, I'm surprised. Maybe I'm showing my complete ignorance of the finance world, because mostly it's something I don't care about, and so I say that, Jason, because you didn't ask any question about AI. The whole world is moving to AI, and I'm wondering, is there a place in the trading world for AI to make a decision faster than 2.4 seconds? By the way, Victor, I find this whole thing fascinating. I mean, your description of what you do and is I am amazed by the mind gymnastics you must go through every day. What do you walk out of there just a pretzel and a limp rag at the end of the
soaking wet
or getting this thing to wake up. I was like, I didn't want a cup of coffee, so I took a shower just to freshen up a bit. No, I think I do think that there's probably a place for AI in the future. I do think that I think a lot of companies are moving to these like automated, like your 401k, like these automated investors. I know a couple firms you could, you kind of fill out a little questionnaire and then the computer will trade your investments for you. Yeah, I mean, I got bored and I was playing around with it. I put, some of my investments in there and kind of thought, let's see how this thing does. So there is AI, whether it gets to the broker dealer side, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's a place for it, because a lot of it's a people business, right? You have to engage with your clients. You have to have conversations. You have to get color. And then that leads to other businesses, right? It's not just that one product. It's the other avenues of revenue and business that every transaction brings. Sometimes I'm trading with a client, for CDS, and I'll give them a really good level because we were just talking, and I know that I just introduced them to the cash traders or something, and they're going to go talk and they're going to go do another cash trade, right? It's like it's you have to think about the big picture of how your firm can do more business with the client.
So there's this notion in the AI world, kind of a classic picture, the mechanical Turk, right? It's a box with a person in it, but you can't see the person. And you give the box a problem, and the box solves the problem. And the fact that there's a person inside the box is not relevant. It's still a box that solves problems, right? And you could argue that a financial market is the world's largest, most complex mechanical Turk, with millions and millions of boxes containing people and machines, all solving their little piece of the same problem. So is it an artificial intelligence? I don't know, but it's a kind of intelligence. And, the output of that intelligence, I guess in the broad view is, something like the market indexes that you trade, which encapsulates all of those trading decisions in, one set of numbers. In my experience, I've seen very, very few automated systems, expert systems, machine learning algorithms, call it what you will, that had the capacity on a consistent basis to outperform an entire market. They're very rare, right? Another thing we see here on Bali is a whole bunch of people selling trading algos, and they always talk about how much money they make, but they rarely talk about how much money they make with respect to the underlying assets. And the truth is that they almost always lose money. If you the old saw, right? If you want to make money, buy and hold. Just make sure you buy and hold the right thing, right? And buying and holding an index. What about you guys, Vic? I mean, do you at the end of the day, Do you outperform your indices?
Uh,
Should I turn the video off again?
no, I think
I guess you are the index.
I mean,
correct.
yeah,
We are the index. I think it's you know, how much revenue you generate for the firm, how much generated with clients, and you know, how you perform relative to your peers at other institutions.
Yeah.
we saw Burt Malkiel random walk down Wall Street, right? But I guess you have specialized knowledge.
Sorry, say again.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of the whole Burton Malkiel random walk down Wall Street. You know, you can't beat the market, but I guess if you are the market, I mean, in essence, you have specialized knowledge sitting where you are.
Yeah.
Well, I would say we
also,
as a sell side trader, I don't have any inside information, right?
That's when I say specialized knowledge, I don't mean that at all.
Oh.
I don't want you to feel like you're in an awkward position. Yeah.
Well, worth pointing out that the random walk is technically random in the sense that a randomness indicator would indicate that it's mostly random. But the truth is that it comes from someplace, right? And where it comes from is the collision of millions of deliberate decisions, highly non-random decisions that when they crash together in the marketplace, produce something that looks like a random walk, right? So it is, while the random walk is a good model of it, if you wanted to approach it statistically, it really doesn't capture the actual behavior going on, which is not random at all, you know?
One of the cool things about going to Booth was I got to have lunch with Eugene Fama, and we posed the question about about his thesis about markets being perfectly efficient, and he conceded that, you know, history has shown that his theory was incorrect. However, he still got the Nobel Peace Prize, or the Nobel Prize for it.
But I mean, you're definitely not. I wouldn't think you're in as nearly as an efficient a market as a security like a highly traded stock, right?
No,
I mean, you know.
So ours is very much ours is, you could, if the indices were efficient, it would trade at the net asset value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of emotion, or, hey, I have money and I have to put it to use. And what's one way to put it to use? I buy the index because I don't know where I want to go put my money. Buy the credit index, and boom, my money's invested. And sometimes leads to where these indices are extremely tight. Like right now, we're trading at all-time tights, and yet, you know, you still find people that are trying to buy it, and you're just like, wow. I'm like, I'll sell it. You know, it just makes no sense at some point.
Guys, I'm going to have to interrupt this. We're coming up on our limit. Vic, you did the thing that is this is my most coveted kind of meetup, the kind where the discussion is so damn interesting we never even get to updates and intros. I appreciate it very much. And guys, for those of you who aren't finance nerds, thank you so much for sticking with us through this. I will apologize in advance for the extra short full video, because I think we're going to cut a couple of chunks out, but the clips will be worth it for sure. Vic, thanks again. Real quick, everybody, meet up again next week as usual. We're going to have as our guest, this is a surprise as of last night, Scott Mackey, the fellow who runs the Surface Academy Business Mastermind, has agreed to come talk to us next week. So you heard it here first. Real excited about that. I'll be following up here pretty soon after breakfast with contact information for everybody who's permitted me to share it, as well as the full chat log from this video. And then later on in the weekend, we'll do a second follow-up with the somewhat curtailed full call video, along with a transcript and references and resources and such. And then we'll be contacting individuals later on in the week for permission to use clips of them explaining esoteric subjects at length to the great interest of everybody on the screen. And again, just Vic, I love geeking out about this stuff, man. I really appreciate it. But look out for those. Also look out for classmate alerts. We'll let you know when your classmates have signed up for the next meetup. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Just a fascinating discussion and definitely one for the record book. So thanks very much. Have a great week. Love you all. We'll see you next week with Scott Mackey. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.